Welcome to the Collide Kids Podcast, hosted by Kristen Clark. This is a show for kids and families. You are going to meet new people and have fun while you listen. Let's do it!
Hey, y'all, welcome to the Collide Kids Podcast. I'm your host, Kristen Clark. The Collide Kids Podcast is a show for kids and families where we learn together how life and faith collide. I am so glad that you're listening today. Thank you so much for being here and spending this time with me. If this is your first time listening, welcome. I'm glad you're checking things out. Be sure to listen to the end of every episode. That's where we have the kids only segment where kids just like you get to be on the podcast. Well, just as a reminder, we just have a couple episodes left before I take a break in July. It's something that I do every season, but don't worry, there are lots of episodes for you to catch up on if you missed a few. Just head over to the collidekidspodcast.com and you can learn about the guests and all the episodes I have available there, or you can head over to my social media where you can find the same information. And listen, take the Collide Kids Podcast with you as you travel this summer. My family loves to listen to podcasts on long car rides. So when we're traveling and going to the beach or to the pool, it's just a great thing to have available. We also like to listen to podcasts when we need to take a break from screens. It just gives us something fun to do together. Well, today's episode is a first for me. I have a repeat guest. That means this person has been on the show before. She actually appeared on episode 25, and her episode was so helpful and so encouraging for parents and kids. So I am delighted to have Sissy Goff back on the podcast today. Sissy is the director of child and adolescent counseling at Daystar Ministries in Nashville, Tennessee, where she works alongside her counseling assistant / pet therapist, Lucy the Havanese puppy. Since 1993, she has been helping kids and their parents find confidence in who they are and hope in who God is making them to be, both as individuals and as families. She is a sought-out speaker and a frequent guest on media outlets including CNN, Good Morning America, Inside Edition, and many more. She is the best-selling author of 13 books, including her latest book, which we are going to talk about today. So here is my conversation with Sissy Goff. Well, Sissy Goff, I am so excited to have you on the Collide Kids Podcast again.
I'm so honored to be back. Kristen, thank you.
I've never said that before because you're my first repeat guest. I've had so many and now you're back and I'm so glad.
Well, it is a privilege to be your first repeat guest,
Yes.
Certainly.
Thank you. Well, would you just introduce yourself in case people have not heard of you before? Will you tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Yes. So I'm Sissy, as you said, and I live in Nashville, Tennessee, where I have the privilege of counseling kids and families now for 30 years.
Wow.
Which is a really long time. And one of the very coolest parts of my job is that I get to take my dog with me to work every day. And so we work at this, we call it the little yellow house that helps people, but it's, we actually do counseling out of a yellow house with a white picket fence.
Nice.
And our offices look like living rooms. We have popcorn popping in the afternoons. It's a really cool place. And then in the summers, I switch gears a little bit and we have a summer camp type program, summer retreat program is what we call it, for the kids who are involved at Daystar. And so I get to be the director of that. And so
Nice.
You caught me in between today. Sunday, I'll be up driving a boat with a bunch of high school kids. So
That's so great.
it's a fun part of what I get to do.
Yeah.
Yes.
How long have you done the camp?
We have, well, there's been some version of it going since before I got to Daystar, but this part has been happening, I think, for 22 years.
Wow. That's awesome.
So pretty long time.
Yeah, I love camp. Summer camp is so fun. I used to work at a summer camp and it's just the
which
best.
camp? Where'd you work?
It was a place in Plumtree, North Carolina. It's called Teen Valley Ranch. Yeah.
Yes.
And yeah,
I've heard of it.
Yeah, it was great.
Cool.
Yeah, very very formative years as I got to work with kids. I slept in a teepee for a few summers. It was
Bless
real
your
camping.
bones. Ours is a little cushier than that. That is real
That's good.
camping. Yeah.
Yeah.
I couldn't be doing that at my age. No tents anymore.
Yeah. That's when I was in high school and college. So those were.
Yeah.
I will not be sleeping in a teepee ever again, probably. But.
No.
Yes. Well, I'm so excited to talk with you today. And I really feel like I was telling you earlier, like your episode that you did in 2020 was such a great episode that I've referred to so many people dealing with anxiety and worry. And now we're going to kind of talk about that again today. So I'm really excited to talk to you. But before we do that, because this is a show for kids, I always like to ask my guests I always make my guests tell me a joke.
Okay.
So what have you got for us today?
So I had to do a little research, and I have a 4-year-old nephew currently, and he loves knock-knock jokes. So I got a knock-knock joke.
Okay.
You ready?
Yes.
Okay. Knock-knock.
Who's there?
Ida.
Ida who?
I think it's pronounced Idaho.
I think you're correct. I think it is. Idaho. That's good. Oh, I like that one. That's a good one.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks.
I feel like there's not a lot of knock-knock jokes I haven't heard before, and I haven't heard that one. So good job.
Thanks. I'm so glad.
I'm impressed. Okay, so let's talk a little bit. You work with lots of people, and you said you work with kids and families. What is the thing that you help with the most? Like, what's something that you really feel like you deal with a lot?
Well, in this day and time, really for the last couple of years, I think the thing I'm talking to kids about and parents the most about is worry, worry and anxiety. And I think at all ages, we are more worried really than we've ever been. And so it feels like to help with that makes a difference for a lot of different people, kids and parents alike.
So what do you think it is about today? Like, what is it that makes people so anxious?
Well, there's so many things we could talk about. Technology is one thing, which I think it's important to touch on because I think it's true of all of us. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting. I talked to a psychiatrist one time who studies the brain a lot, and she talked about how even when we're just looking at a screen, whether it's TV now, I mean, if you could watch a TV show from the 70s versus today, you'd be fascinated by the difference in how much we're being bombarded by stimulation. And so our brains are mimicking what they do when we get anxious just when we're looking at screens a lot of times with all the different notifications and things coming in. And so I think technology for all of us at all ages, certainly social media, there's so many studies out showing how it is increasing not just anxiety, but also depression sometimes. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's a piece of it. But I would say another one that is really important to talk about is I think not only our kids, but adults are feeling more pressure than ever before. Yeah. I feel like the kids I talk to are feeling more pressure to get the perfect grades, to be the very best on any sports team they're involved in, to have the most perfect picture that they draw for art when they're still learning to draw. It's like we're supposed to be 100% without realizing we're really learning a lot of the things we're doing. And I have a lot of parents who will say, my kids will quit doing the things that they don't do really well. And it makes me sad because I think everything, I now sometimes speak in front of thousands of people, which is still a little scary to me. It was terrifying when I started doing it. And it took me a long time. I just did a podcast interview. I just finished today doing a podcast interview with Lauren and Thomas Rhett Akins.
Yeah.
And, he's so cool and he's such a huge singer. And 5 years ago, because I wasn't doing things like that, I would have been a nervous wreck. But I've done it now enough that I don't feel as nervous. We get better at anything we practice. And so I think to help not feel that kind of pressure to be perfect, I think is really important to talk to kids about and parents. Because I think parents have never been as anxious. And I think part of it is you are inundated with information today about how to be a good parent.
Right.
Way more than any of our parents were ever inundated with. I think my mom read one parenting book along the way, and really what it said was smile at your child. And so, which is why I think I smile a lot. But I think it's just too much. And so I think it's really part of the problem that parents are anxious is there's a sense of I've got to be a perfect parent, and nobody's going to be. Nobody's going to get it right all the time. And that's not really what your kids need anyway. They need you to be with them.
That's right.
And to connect with them.
That's good. That makes me think of, like, I'm a voice teacher. And so when I'm doing a lesson, and we'll do warm-ups at the very beginning. And I always have to say, the warm-ups are supposed to sound bad. Like, don't try to make that, because they'll apologize. I'm sorry, I didn't hit that. Right. Like, we're stretching right now. So it's like, even the beginning parts, like, we have to remind them through the process. It's okay that it doesn't look great or it doesn't sound perfect yet, because that's what we're working towards. So I'm glad you said that. I think that's something we all need a reminder about, is it doesn't have to be perfect at the beginning. And trying things out. The part of learning is messing up, right?
Right. We took a lot about practice makes progress.
Yes.
Not perfect.
That's so much better. That should be like on the wall, on the plaque wall. So we put everything. So you've just written a book about this, and it's talking a little bit more towards parents. So can you tell us a little bit about your new book?
Yeah, so I've written a book. I wrote a book for parents of girls about how to help your girls, because girls are leading the statistics on anxiety. Now with kids, we are 1 in 4 children, 1 in 3 adolescents. Girls are twice as likely to deal with worry and anxiety as boys. And for adults, it's 1 in 3, and women are twice as likely as men.
Wow.
And so I felt like I'm sitting with so many parents who feel like they're very aware their kids are struggling, and they will sit with me and say things like, I think I'm contributing to the problem. I want to help learn how to calm myself down so that I can help them learn how to calm down too. I want to have good coping skills so they can too, because when they get upset, I get upset right beside them. Yeah. And it's not helpful to anyone, which is exactly right. And so I just felt ready to, hearing so many parents feel heartbroken over that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. I was ready to give parents something to really not go to the source in terms of the source of the problem, but a lot of the source of change for both the parent and the child alike.
Right. And when you feel like things escalate and you see someone else escalating even more, you're like, should I be more worried about what's happening right now? Right. So That's kind of a natural, like, you're feeding off other people. So in our parenting, we have to be mindful of that. If we freak out about something, our kids are watching us thinking like, oh, I should be responding that way. Exactly.
Even when a child, when you think about a toddler that falls down and we go, oh no, are you okay? All of a sudden they're alerted to, oh, maybe I'm not, rather than,
right.
I heard somebody say today, you're really great at falling. That was awesome. What a different response.
Right. That's good. So how is that though? How is anxiety contagious? You said like we kind of feed off of the other person. So why does it work that way? We'll be right back after this. Raising kids in the digital age isn't easy, but Bark Technology makes products that help parents keep their kids safe online and in real life. They have an app, a phone, and a home device that lets families set parental controls on their internet-connected devices. I love the app because it helps us manage screen time and blocks websites and apps we want our kids to avoid. It also sends alerts and gives us the ability to monitor texts and social media and even track your child's location. Visit bark.us to learn more about how you can keep your kids safe online. Use the code COLLIDEKIDS to get 15% off your subscription of the Bark app.
Well, there are a lot of different reasons that that's true, but I really think in the moment, part of what's happening is the part of our brain that's becoming activated is the amygdala, which is the fight or flight part of the brain. And I think there is something about standing in the presence with someone whose amygdala has been activated that yours gets that way too. I will often walk away as an adult, from conversations with someone where I think, why was I so awkward? And then I'll think, oh, wait, I think they were anxious. And then I ended up being anxious too, without feeling anxious going into the conversation. I just think there's something that happens like that. And so I think that's part of the ability to spread. And I think from parent to child, particularly kids are so intuitive. Mm-hmm. And so they start to pick up on it even when we're not saying it. And I think the last thing I would say is, I know for me, one of the things that happens when I feel anxious is I get real intense and serious and, stronger than I mean to be. Mm-hmm. And so I think when I'm around not just kids, thinking about being up at our little camp this week and with employees, I think with the college counselors. When I start to get like that, I feel like they get more, on the alert themselves. And I'm not sometimes even aware that's what I'm doing, which again is why I want to help parents. Because sometimes I think we're not aware that we're giving off that kind of energy.
Right. So how do we know that? How do we know that maybe we don't realize we're responding so anxiously? How do we figure that out?
That is a great question. I mean, I would say you can watch the faces of the people around you. Or if it feels like all of a sudden your kid's getting if there was something you were worried about and they all of a sudden are acting out, then that's probably that they're picking up on it from you. Because all behavior is communication from kids. And I would say, too, it's great just to have a sense of thinking through. Actually, there's a book and a journal because I'm wanting parents to really dig in and think through. Because one thing I would encourage you to think about is, what are you like when you're anxious? What is kind of the oil light on the car, for a lack of a better way to set, for me, I get intense or I get really angry at myself. And so nobody around me necessarily knows, but all of a sudden I'm being super critical of myself. And so what is it that you do in any given moment? Maybe you just notice that your shoulders are hunched up to your ears, and you think, wait, why am I doing that? Well, that's because you're anxious, and maybe you didn't even realize that was the case. So, but I would say the thing I'm hearing parents right now talk more about feeling like failures than ever before and feeling like they're struggling with getting angry. And I think anxious parents are some of the best parents I know, and they would never intend to get angry. But that's what happens when they start to feel that way. And so, again, just being aware, what are kind of our indicators that there's more going on underneath whatever is happening in the moment.
Yeah.
Because one of the tools that we talk about is how do you kind of put a different frame on the worry. And I would say worried parents really are the best parents I know. You care, you're conscientious, you're trying hard. And worried kids are the coolest kids I know because of the same idea. You're really smart and you try hard and things matter to you. It's these amazing parts of who God made all of us to be. We just get tripped up in it sometimes.
Yeah. Let's think about the kids that are listening right now. What is the difference between worry and anxiety?
That's a great question. So, we all have really normal fear. We have things that we're afraid of, like, I really don't like spiders. I'm kind of afraid of spiders. I'm afraid of snakes, all that kind of stuff.
Me too.
And yeah,
Ugh.
but right now, I don't feel like there's going to be a spider that crawls on me. I don't feel afraid of spiders right now. I only am afraid of the thing when I'm encountering it, when I'm with it in the moment. So worry and anxiety, we feel them even when it's not happening. And so there's something that's kind of a psychological term called intrusive thoughts. We all have these intrusive thoughts every day. It does not mean something's wrong with you. Maybe my zipper's not zipped, or maybe I'm about to fall, or maybe I didn't do very well on that test. Whatever the intrusive thought is, when the thought gets stuck, oh no, I don't think I did very well on that test. I failed that test. That was terrible. And now I can't stop thinking about it all day long. That means we lean a little bit more towards being anxious or having some anxiety. Now, that doesn't mean, again, something's really wrong with you. It's these amazing parts of who you are that means you get stuck. And I think it's really important to say that in big things, when you're about to make a speech, if you're going off the high dive for the first time, things like that, everyone feels anxious. It doesn't mean something's wrong with you. And you may think about it for 2 hours leading up to it. That doesn't mean something's wrong. And I don't want any kid who's listening to feel like something's wrong with them just because they worry and feel some anxiety. Now, there's a time that anxiety gets significant enough that we need somebody to help, like me, who's a counselor. But all of us feel those things on any day.
Absolutely. I actually interviewed Laura Wilkinson, who is a Olympic high diver. And she said, if you don't feel fear when you're standing on the high dive, then something's wrong. Like, you should feel that fear because that fear is helping you. It's part of your body's reaction to help you know what you're supposed to do and to lean into your training or whatever. So like you said, that is totally normal for you to feel those feelings when you're going into big situations. So I think what you're saying is it's perfectly normal. It's something that a lot of us deal with. It's just if we feel stuck in it, that's when we need to probably get some help or talk with someone. So what are some things we can do about that? If we feel like, okay, I do feel like I can get stuck on something that worries me for a really long time, how should they respond?
Well, I want you to, there are practical things that I think we talked about the last time I was on the podcast, like breathing, which they could even go back to the last one and listen to it again. But breathing is always going to calm our amygdala down and get us back into the rational part of our brain. And you're going to feel silly and feel like this doesn't really make a difference. Why am I breathing? I breathe all the time. But there's a certain way that we do it that literally dilates the blood vessels in our brain and gets our thinking brain engaged again so that we can get out of that thought. So breathing. And then I want you to flip the thought to something positive, which we really do call reframing. I have artwork beside me right now, and I have this picture of a boy fishing that my great uncle painted. And there's a black frame around it. If I changed that and put a gold frame around it, it would look totally different. I'd see different things. That's what we do with our thoughts. And so if you think, why am I so mad? Why am I so worried about this test? I can't stop thinking about it. Instead of think about, man, this is cool that I care about this test this much because this means I'm a good student and this means things matter to me. And so, we talk about giving worry a name. So I'm not going to listen to you worry. Tell me that something's wrong with me because that's not right. It's actually because of a really awesome thing about who I am. So I'm not listening to you anymore. Where we flip it and we see that there are positive parts of who we are as kids and as parents in both places.
Yeah, I think that's good. That's a really good idea. And just to put that positive thought on it, it kind of helps you rethink. So, okay, so the parents that are listening, they're like, okay, I know I have someone in my family that deals with worry. So how can they help their child who's struggling in that way?
I think... Well, I'm going to ask parents two things. And kids, I think it'd be great for y'all to talk about this together. I want you to think about what are two things you're doing for your kids right now that they can do for themselves. And what are two things you're doing for your kids that they can almost do for themselves. And I want you to stop doing all four. Because... And you kids that are listening, one of the things that you do sometimes is when you start to get worried, you want your mom or dad to fix it. And you want them to step in and do it for you. You can do it.
Yes. You
absolutely can do it. And so I want you to have a sentence that you say to yourself over and over. Like my little nephew I was talking about before, we went to Disney World not long ago. And, when you're 4, there are a lot of scary rides at Disney. And so we talked, I think probably 10 times a day, about a little bit scary, a whole lot of fun. A little bit scary, a whole lot of fun. And, it's funny because I was with him not long ago, so 2 months later, and he was climbing up on a ladder, and he said, I feel a little bit scared, but this is a lot of fun. I think anytime we can have something we say to ourselves over and over. And so kids, when you feel like, okay, I want my mom to fix this for me or my dad to rescue me right now, I can't do this. Whatever it is that you say to yourself, a little bit scary, a whole lot of fun. Or I have a girl who jumped off the high dive, which was scary for her. And she would say, if I can go off the high dive, I can do this. Whatever it is you need to say to yourself over and over. And parents, that you do the same thing. And you're saying to your kids, you can do this. You're capable. You are so much stronger than you know.
That's so true. Parents, we really want to jump in and fix it or make it just like it should be. And that could be an anxiety trigger, is that we're always fixing things that our kids do instead of letting them make mistakes or do it a little imperfectly.
Yeah. And I really would say the number one thing you can do for your kids is manage your own anxiety.
Yeah.
Hands down in this day and time.
Let's talk a little bit about confidence, because I think that's something that we all struggle with as well. And maybe is that what contributes to our anxiety and worry, is our lack of confidence?
Certainly does in this day and time too. Yes. And I think it is a self-fulfilling cycle. So it is, I don't believe I'm confident enough to do this thing, and then I didn't do it. So now I feel even less confident in who I am. I'm not a good parent, and so I'm going to fix this. And now I feel bad because I know I'm not really supposed to fix this.
Right. You're like, great, I'm still not doing it right.
Right.
So what is confidence? Let's define that first. What is confidence and why should we have more of it?
That is a great question. What is confidence? I would say, what I want to say is that confidence is your understanding of the gifts that God has equipped you with. Mm-hmm. Because they're there. It's not the fact that you're trying to become all these things that are going to help you feel more confident, the things that are already there. And so how do you figure out more of what they are and start to step into them and believe, kids believe what your parents are saying about you because they're not making it up. They're telling you things that are true. I think we get more by, I'm going to say 2 big picture ideas. One is exactly what we were just talking about, trust. Mm-hmm. That we trust the things that our parents say about us are true, that we trust the things that God says about us are true.
Yeah.
Even more importantly. And number 2, experience. In fact, research says that when kids do hard things, when we do hard things, we gain confidence. And the harder the thing is, the more confidence we get from it. Mm-hmm. And so, that's a great question to talk about together. What's one hard thing each of you can do this week?
Yeah.
And maybe it's doing something new or it's not doing something that you feel like sometimes keeps you safe. So what's one thing you can do this week?
Yeah, and growing that confidence. And I think for me, confidence is just that I'm not so focused on myself. Because I think confidence kind of sounds like a prideful thing. But to me, confidence is just I'm not relying on myself. I'm relying on God and who he made me to be. And because I know he created me to be a good friend or to be good at talking with people or whatever, I can move forward in those things and then have those experiences, like you said, to try hard things and see what else I can do, So just not being so focused on ourselves, I think, helps us.
I totally agree with that. I love that idea.
So, we've talked about this so much, but there's just lots of bad things that have happened, things that were on the news, things that make us really worried, things that we have no control over. How do we as a family move forward in that without getting overly anxious?
Well, I think one of the things to think about is, like you said, a lot of those kind of things feel really out of our control, and to think about what is in your control. Mm-hmm. If you feel really nervous about storms, and if you feel really nervous about tornadoes coming, so you can't control the weather. I wish we could. But what we can do is control that we know we have a safe place to go. When a bad storm comes, we have a weather radio so that we know that it's coming, or we have an app on our phone that alerts us. And once we start to feel anxious, we know we can do certain things to calm our bodies back down in that moment. So thinking about what we can control. And I would say when hard things do happen, so not just that they might happen, I love the wisdom of Mr. Rogers' mom, who talked about looking towards the helpers, looking for the helpers. And so who do we see that's making a difference? And even beyond that, how can we thank them? How can we look for people who are making a difference and have some purpose and make a difference ourselves and give to somebody else when something like that's happening?
Yeah, that's good. And I think those are always the best stories too, when you hear of people that are stepping up, and even in the midst of a horrible situation, there are people that are stepping in to help out. And how can we pray for them? How can we thank them? I love that idea. And then also, are there ways that we can help out and be helpers ourselves? Yes. I think that's huge.
Yes, because I think as we're talking about worry and anxiety, gratitude sure offsets that, but so does having a sense of purpose. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it creates more confidence too.
Right, because you're not focused on yourself. You're having to think of other people and how you can jump in. And so I think that helps too, just to get the focus off ourselves. Really helps. Well, Sissy, this has been so good talking with you today. I'm so thankful for these conversations. And I really think that lots of parents and kids are going to enjoy this and also benefit from it. Tell us a little bit about your new book and where they can find it.
Yes, it's called The Worry-Free Parent, Finding the Confidence You Need So Your Kids Can Too. And you can find it wherever books are sold, including we have a website called raisingboysandgirls.com. And I also am very active at Sissy Goff on Instagram and Raising Boys and Girls too. We're trying to put out as much helpful information as we possibly can in those places.
That's great. And you also have a podcast.
Oh, I forgot that. Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Tell us about your podcast.
Yes, we have a podcast called Raising Boys and Girls that we are having a blast doing.
Yes, that's awesome. Well, I am so thankful that you have come on the show today. Before I let you go, I always like to ask my guests to share a memory from when they were a kid. So do you have a memory you want to share with us?
Yes. Well, I was thinking about parents and kids connecting as I was thinking about getting to talk to you today, and thinking about how one of my very favorite things was dancing with my dad to Motown music when I was growing up.
Nice.
And my favorite type of music is Motown still, I think, because of that. And so I'm a huge advocate for dance parties while you're making dinner or after dinner, whole family dance parties. I've been dancing with my nephews a lot this summer, even to Drew Holcomb's song Family. Yeah. It's so fun. It's a great suggested dance party song for me.
Okay, I'm adding it to the list. I love that.
Add it to the list.
Such a good idea. Well, Sissy, thank you so much for being here today and for your wisdom and what you're doing to help families. I think it's so incredible. So thank you for what you're doing.
Thank you, Kristen. You too.
Wow, I learned so much today, and I'm so thankful that Sissy was on the show. She reminded us that it's okay to mess up and not be perfect all the time, and she had some great ideas for parents. It's really important that parents get good coping skills so that our children will be able to also learn those good coping skills. And I love when she was talking about reframing our thoughts, to flip the script, to think of something positive to focus on when you're going through a moment of worry or anxiety. So finding something that can help you see it in a positive light, I think that's so helpful. She also gave us families a challenge to sit down and talk about what are 2 things that kids can do for themselves and what are 2 things that kids can almost do for themselves. And then parents need to stop doing all 4, because when kids get worried, they know that parents are going to step in and fix things, right? So instead, we're helping our kids get the confidence and courage to face things that they're worried about, reframe it, and to do it anyway. I think that's such good advice and such a great thing for your family to talk about. And just as a reminder, we talked today about a previous episode that Sissy was on. So if you'd like to hear that episode, How to Overcome Worry, you can scroll all the way back down to episode 25. Well, I am so excited about Sissy's new book that is coming out later this summer. It's called The Worry-Free Parent, Living in Confidence So Your Kids Can Too. So I hope you'll head over to her website and learn more about how you can pre-order your copy. Just go to raisingboysandgirls.com. You'll also learn about her podcast she has there, as well as other resources that might be of interest to you and your family. And you can follow her on Instagram and Facebook at Sissy Goff, and also at Raising Boys and Girls. Well, now it's time for the kids only segment. This is the part of the show where you get to be on the podcast. So here is my friend, Jacob.
Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your strength. Deuteronomy 6:5.
Thank you, Jacob. I love that verse. And it reminds me of a song. A lot of the memory verses that I know really well are based on songs. Love Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind. I sing them all the time whenever I read them in the Bible. That's such a good one. Well, if you would like to be on the podcast just like Jacob was and share your favorite Bible verse, or maybe a fun joke or quote or song that you like to sing, you can head over to my website, collidekidspodcast.com, and click the tab at the top where it says Kids Only, and there you'll see where you can record it right there. It's super easy, or you can send it to me through my social media. I'm on Facebook at the Collide Kids Podcast, or on Instagram at Collide Kids Pod, and I'd love for you to follow me there and learn more about the things that I have on my social media. And if you'd like to support the podcast, there's a few ways you can do that you can find on my website. And a huge one is to leave a rating and a review. That means so much, and it really does help more people find out about the show. You can also share this episode with friends and family and let them know why you and your family like to listen. And anytime you think about it, I always appreciate your prayer support as well. Well, I hope you guys have an amazing summer. I hope you guys are enjoying this time with your family. And in case no one has told you today, I would love to be the first to remind you that God loves you so much. Thanks for listening.
You don't have to go very far looking for bad news because somehow it just finds you. So finding peace in the chaos can be really difficult, but it doesn't have to be because the River mobile app exists. The River is a Christian music radio station dedicated to playing music to help you get through life's toughest moments or life's happiest moments and everywhere in between, and all from artists who love Jesus and are real people just like you. Listening is easy. You can download it wherever you get apps from. Just search 1049 The River or listen online at riverradio.com. And know that The River is proud to partner with the Collide Kids podcast.